welcome to part 2 of my interview with Tom Dutta. Now just a heads up, if you didn't listen to part 1, now would be the time to go back and listen to that, because none of this going forward is going to make sense. You're going to need the context. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy part 2. Thank you.
That my coach actually saw that journey, and so I just want to say that to you, honestly, with that I'm grateful for that, because I don't think if I had you to walk beside me through this, especially because I want to just talk about this one thing for a minute, that I'm taking a course called cognitive behavioral therapy, and whenever I say therapist, people go, "Ooh, something wrong with you." And I said in my TED talk, I said, and then there's my therapist. She's a real smart lady. You got to get one of these. She said to me that day in the quiet corner of my dimly lit room, she says, "Tom, you need to go to a job that works your body so you can start healing your mind." And I went, "What? You think I should be an exotic dancer or something?" And it was that moment that made me say, I got to go and do something physical, or I'm going to slip further in depression. But they've had me I've been poked and prodded by doctors, and they've had me in therapy, of course, learning that the way to get your brain healthy, and everybody can do this even if you don't have anxiety or depression. Your brain is an organ, and you have to care for it. And it goes through cycles. You could have somebody die. You could have a loss of job. You will go through cycles of mental health. 1 in 3 people will experience a mental health issue. It's not a matter of when, but it's a matter of time. And the other part of it is the people who crack emotionally often are the CEOs and the top leaders running companies, because they have all the pressure, and the workers on the ground floor think they have pressure, but it's a different kind of pressure. We have to report to boards, write the business plans, make the decisions that could make or break the company. We sometimes decide on people's lives, taking their jobs away from them. And we're in demand. I mean, we run companies where we're pulled everywhere. We lose our families. We travel. I traveled for 5 years, didn't see my daughter. I call myself a frequent flyer, not a frequent father. And so you have this pressure that happens when you're dealing with it. And I never really learned from my childhood, which wasn't great, as I wrote about in my book, that how you can teach your brain, it's called neuroplasticity, to swap thoughts and teach it how to actually stop and pause and analyze your thoughts. And most of the thoughts we have aren't true. That's a big radical statement. I call them a kernel of thought. So if you draw a piece of popcorn on a paper, that's your thought. It's a kernel. And what surrounds it is a circle I call the circle of interpretation. And so I'm learning all this. I'm not just trying to come across sound like a know-it-all, but if you believe that most thoughts you have are not true because they're based on things that were told to us that aren't true, and yet most of us react to those thoughts, the outcomes are never very positive. So in CBT, what I'm learning is how to actually pause and use the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that analyzes your thoughts and all the things around it, and then decides, how do I behave and act? What's my emotion supposed to be? And when we started working together doing the TED Talk, I didn't tell you, but my team knew when you do a TED Talk like this, there's 17 speakers and there's a team of 8 coaches. So they pick you apart. You get tough feedback. You perform live, and they drill on you. And if it's not for the faint of heart. If you're not good at receiving feedback, you better watch it. My coach said the first time she heard me speak, she said, "You're boring and stoic." And then later she says, my talk came into its own, she said, "I've never seen that, Tom." She says, "You're charismatic. You're great, and you're good with people." And she said, "You even look good and all this stuff." I'm going like, "Who are you talking about?" And she said, "I've never seen that side of you." And she said, "I guess when I met you, you were like a wet blanket because you're at this point in your life." So that's the other thing I want to say about this, is that what you believe you are and think you are is what you will be. And if somebody told you you're not good enough or treated you poorly, it's wired in your neural nets in your brain, and the brain goes to those thought patterns before it actually thinks about new thoughts. And so part of me for a long time wanted to do TED Talk, but would never have the courage to get on the stage. It was actually meeting you and working back in a place where I could discover who I was that said, "You know what? You belong on that stage." And in working in the Costco warehouse, I learned something that I never knew before. And it's in my TED Talk, so I don't want to really steal the thunder and share all of it, but I learned what people really want. What people really want is a safe place to talk about how they're feeling. And they want to look up at the penthouse and all the layers of managers above and see that they care for their own mental health, And because they care for their mental health, they're able to treat the workers well and look after them. And I made a bold statement, which I'm going to crack open the world with my talk when it comes out on video, that when leaders fail to make their own mental health a priority, they undermine the importance of the mental health of all the people that they're leading. And so if the penthouse floor is cracking because the leader, is not looking after their mental health, they're overstressed, and they're projecting that on their leaders, it trickles down. That's why there's a stigma below, because people won't talk. But if they ever see their boss say, you know what, it's kind of stressful today, or today's been a rough day, how do you feel? When we can start talking about that, it's okay to say we're not okay. Then we can start caring for, realizing maybe there's a problem and we need, to get stronger. Then we can all start talking about it. So I'm actually going out with my TED Talk to the world to crack open the leadership of the world and put the point the finger at them that they own the accountability for helping break the silence and set the example, because they have the money and the power to change the way organizations run. But most of them, like I was, are quietly silent. They don't talk about it. And the only time I ever talked about my mental health was in the privacy of my office with a coach or a doctor's office. And I coach CEOs and executives for a living. That's part of my training company. And when I sit down with them, all their stories, all the blood on their shirt comes out. Stories about stress and this and that. And yet they turn to a bottle of wine or drugs or porn or whatever they can find, hoping nobody's going to notice, to numb that part of them. So my talk is not just to poke fun at people like me who come from the top, but to show the workers on the ground floor that we're humans and many of us struggle like you. We just are afraid to talk about it because our bosses might fire us and might see us as not capable. So I'm about to change the world. I'm on a mission to crack that open. I've got a call that came in to actually go and speak in New York in October at a global conference called Make a Difference. And if I get that, I'm going to be actually revealing this TED Talk in a bigger way for a bigger period of time and starting a movement to change the stigma, but to get that level of people involved in the game. So I just lost track where the question started, but it came a full circle back. There you go. We met on the floor of Costco, and I wasn't just a sweaty face.
All right. I'm going to unpack a whole lot of things right there. Everybody listening, that is a very passionate man speaking. And when you hear that, you want to listen. And that's exactly what I'm doing. But now I'm going to interject a little bit and start throwing some of it back. This man is legit. Everything he's saying right now is true, and it bleeds through him. It comes through his pores. When I'm around this guy, I feel confident about myself. It's because he shares his stories, his struggles. Now, going back, I do want to comment on some things. When I first met him, the first thing that I also noticed is his work ethic. This man works his butt off and earned my respect instantly.
I got no butt left. My wife
he
tells
worked it
me.
off.
I think I did.
So he's so humble. That's the one thing that was so cool about this man as well. Even without even knowing him yet, getting to know him and then finding out more about him and looking back, it's like, wow, this dude laid it on the line. He didn't hold this ego of his prior work. He came in to work hard and to work hard with others and to build a team. Now, moving on from that, I really also want to talk about his journey and the journey that I got to witness watching him explore parts of himself, especially when it comes to his talk. I got the privilege of being able to work with this man and him open up and share his journey with me every step of the way when it came to his performance. When I got to meet with him weekly, it was a joy, because then I got to see him lay it all out there and find his voice. Now, at first, he was getting a lot of coaching and he was trying to find that. It was definitely a struggle, because why wouldn't it be a struggle? It's got to be hard to find your true narrative and the way you want to deliver your talk. But I'm going to tell you guys, there was a moment, a watershed moment, you can say, when I got to see the real Tom come out through his talk. And it gave me goosebumps. In fact, it's giving me goosebumps right now thinking about it. He got this minor feedback of when he went to do a talk in front of some people, and he was recording it. And there was a moment where he was just being Tom before the recording started, before he was going to deliver his talk. And it was like a spark went off. And then his coach saw it and said, "Oh, that's cool." And then he said to me when we were going to do that talk that day, it's like, "You know what? I'm going to be Tom this time. I'm going to just come from me and let's try this out." And before that, it was a lot of overperforming because he was trying to like do what he was instructed to do. Because of course he had amazing coaches, amazing things, but there was something blocking him. But this time he decided, I'm going to be me. And I'm telling you, folks, this was the beginning of the amazing performance that you will eventually witness, or if you were there live, you got to witness. Because it was so powerful. I got so excited after it. I jumped up. I literally just wanted to hug him and be like, "Tom, this is it. Your passion is finally starting to translate into your talk." And then every time I saw him after that, it was just more and more, the layers started to tear off. And you got to see the vulnerable and the very emotional and sensitive and passionate man that has this message that you all got to witness.
Well, the real Tom, I'm not sure how to take that. In the talk, I'm just trying not to give it all away because I really want people to see it perform. Because for those listening, when you stand on a red dot, the metaphor of a red dot at a TED Talk is the red dot is a carpet. It's a 9-foot circumference. And if I was to say to you that all your life you've walked around talking to people, never barriers, and now you're told to stand on a 9-foot circumference circle, don't move, and use your upper body to perform your body moves and your body language to match what comes out of your mouth, it's really hard. You have to rehearse and practice. And I was really uncomfortable up there because I've never had that kind of barrier. I didn't know how to use, like when I said I rode the ride to conquer cancer in my story, I had to actually use my upper body to portray riding a bicycle. So little things like that. But going back to that part of the story, and by the way, when we got here for the interview, there was sun up. It's getting dark. I think we've been going on for about 45 minutes. Is it okay to keep going?
Of course.
Because you can cut this, edit it, you can throw it away, whatever you want. But I want to just say this because part of what I do on my radio show is I use it as teaching, and I want to use this as teaching because I'm not lecturing. In my talk, there's a sentence, and then I'll get back to the part where I shifted. There's a sentence that says, I started my journey to the top in silence, broken emotionally from a broken childhood that grew into an emotionally broken adulthood. But that's not what I showed the world. No. They called me a high achiever, but I was really just a self-worth chaser. You know, I took that ground floor elevator fast, right up to what they call the penthouse. But I never stopped to take a look at any of the floors in between. That's right, I became a CEO at age 31. But living the stigma, convinced that sharing my stories of struggle would only show weakness. I also thought it would hurt my career. So I'll stop there. That is part of the stigma about, you know, how we're trained. But I want to go back deeper because you didn't mention my book yet, but it's out there now. I wrote a book, and I think I've given people even at Costco, probably 5 or 6 copies are out there. You can find it online. It's called The Way of the Quiet Warrior. And it's done well. I've got a lot of reviews written online about it. But I had this calling, and I believe in my faith, but I had this calling from God and other parts of me to write my story. And a lot of it was because of what happened when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, my dad was a military officer a commanding officer in the military, British Army. So I was born on a military base. And as they introduced me at TED, they said, this is a man who was born halfway in the backseat of a cab, which is actually true. It was so strict, they wouldn't let my dad come down to base, and my mom was rushed to the hospital. I was born halfway. Of course, my mom always likes to tell me that explains a lot. Like your brain was half developed or something. Mom, you were right. So, you know, my dad was a commanding officer in the military, and back in Fiji where he and my mom met. My parents are from India. My grandparents, my parents from Fiji. My dad was a Mormon, believe it or not, but he was really a Hindu. He was of Indian faith. And that's why I gave up on my faith, because it was all confusing. Dad was born a Hindu, then he became a Mormon, didn't drink, smoke, then he got in the army, and he started drinking. So my father became a villain. He was a very violent man, bad alcoholic. He was handsome. My mom used to say, "You're Elvis," but he was a good-looking guy with his uniform on, but he started doing things that hurt the family pretty bad, and I took the brunt of it. I wrote about it that I was a black and blue kid. I have two other brothers, and one does struggle with Tourette syndrome, which is a neurological disorder. But our family was destroyed, and I grew up seeing things. If you read my book, the first chapter is called "The Boy." You'll learn about that. I wrote it in a fictional way, and people, when they read it, it stops them, and they said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you went through that," because people just see me as a successful guy on the surface, projects this image of being successful, but inside there's these monsters. You're broken. And so our family was destroyed. The house was sold. My parents divorced. Everything collapsed when I was in my teens. And I took a lot of abuse verbally and physically from my father. And so here's the thing I want to just say is to everybody listening, that when I look in the mirror, what I see coming back from me, that other people see, I can't see. So my wife used to say, she's married to me 24 years now, my amazing aunt, she used to say, "You're so handsome," and I couldn't see it. I saw this ugly guy. And when somebody says, "You're successful," I saw this guy who I was putting myself down. I'm getting praise. I would never receive it. And I became more introverted about that. And here's why. I learned this just through studying brain science, that you have two parts of your brain that you use to think about thoughts. And unlike plants and animals, human beings are the only species who can think about their thoughts. So if I say the word car, your listeners hear car, now they can all start thinking about it. And what do you think about? What comes to mind?
Well, just a vehicle, something to get you from place to place.
Yeah.
Got four wheels.
Yeah.
Million things.
And if you're in a country like, Nigeria, where my friend Daniel Agali, who won the gold Olympic medal for Canada, and is a hero, and he goes back and forth to Nigeria to mentor children and run their Olympic committee. He and I met a long time ago, and we became friends. And he said, "I used to look up at the sky when I was wrestling in the mud pits of Nigeria as a boy." And he said, I just looked up and I saw a plane. He said, I didn't even know what it was. And he said, all I knew is, plus somebody said the people on the plane are going to the Olympics. He said, I didn't know what it was. He said, I just wanted to go. And yet to go from the mud pits of a underprivileged or funded country that has all sorts of challenges and be an Olympian gold medal, it would never happen to any of those children, yet he did it. So why I'm saying that is, when you're a kid and people tell you things, the part of the brain that you have is called the limbic system. And the limbic system, they call it the reptilian brain, or it has the maturity of a 3-year-old. And it's designed for survival. When we came on the earth, humans had to be hunter-gatherers. There was no electricity. It was dark. They would get up in the morning, go hunting, and if something moved in the bush, they had to decide, is it going to kill me or should I just stay here? So the limbic system controls your fight or flight response in your body. So if I say bear, James, there's a bear, what are you going to do?
Me personally, I'm running.
Okay, so split second you heard him say that, but that's because of his limbic system controls that. Now, the limbic system responds to your emotions first. However, most people don't know this, but up until age 20, they don't have something called the prefrontal cortex developed, which is that the part of the brain that gets you to pause and then look at all the facts around that thought and analyze it before you have an emotion and a behavior. That's why you see when kids get said, you can't go to bed or take the candy away, they start screaming and yelling. That is why, because they're going fight or flight. I'm going to fight or going to run away. There's no maturity there. It's just one or the other. So if you get that, let's just say you're a child who grows up like me and you're told you're fat, you're ugly, you're no good. My parents, both of them and one of my brothers, I had all that put on me. And it was what I learned later is because my dad was an alcoholic. His dad was. He grew up in pain. And by the way, if you're ever holding a grudge against somebody who hurt you, go and ask them to hear their story. Because when I heard my dad's story before he died, I never got a chance to finish my time with him. I learned that my grandfather, who I never knew, died in front of my dad from alcohol. That my dad's home was toxic, and he brought that in, the rules of that, into my childhood to parent me. And so if you go back to what I'm saying, up until age about 12, 15, when we don't have that rational part of the brain, everything that you say to somebody says to you is stored in your brain. It's wired into a neuron, and they wire them together through electrical, they call them synaptic connections, to create these thought patterns. So I grew up, when I heard the word Tom, thinking loser, not smart. Brown skin. People think you are not worthy. Because I was picked on, I was bullied, I was called Hindu, raghead. I mean, my life was full of all this. And yet, if my brain said that's what you are, and it wired it. So what happens is that later in life, when you hear something, your brain has a thought, and then it says your brain's lazy, so it wants to find other thoughts quickly that it has buried in it to help you realize what the reality is, what's going on here. So if I said the word bear, and when your brain, when it was a kid, learned that a bear was a big teddy bear that was fluffy and cuddly and your best friend, you all of a sudden the brain will go and say, that's bear. But if it's actually a bear that has teeth and is going to kill you, the prefrontal cortex kicks in and says, wait a minute, look at the facts. This thing has fur. It's got growling teeth. It's got claws. It's over there 20 feet. That's not the teddy bear. So I'm going to override the limbic system and we're going to run or we're going to do something. But let's take a moment. So when you're a kid and it's put in you that you're no good or all these things, and let's face it, most people listening to me can go back and find something in their lifelines where they weren't told what they were. And the world is full of broken homes and kids who are raised by addicted parents like mine or other issues where war soldiers never come back, or kids are with step parents, whatever it is. I just want everybody to know that most of what you think you are today is not who you are. The truth is you were told that. If you learn how to use the prefrontal cortex through things like cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm learning, to pause and analyze facts, you can actually, the brain's the only type of brain we have is not like anybody else's through neuroplasticity. It's plastic. And your brain can actually substitute the neural nets and change the meaning of something. So today when people ask me about my father, who is a villain, he was a violent man who hurt me bad, he destroyed our family. Now I say things like my dad, I love my dad. My dad was a hero. He became a hero. He helped a lot of people. And now when I'm thinking that way and talking that way, I can start thinking about all the good things my dad actually did, despite the fact that there's so many bad things he did that were horrific. That combined with, if you believe in God and your faith, that God was in my life at the time I was being hurt that way for a reason, to teach my dad something, but I was being taught something. And if I look at what I do today with my life and my work, I go out in the world to help lift the stigma and help people stop suffering, but to use my stories to give hope to children in particular who grow up into roles to be leaders and run the world. So I'm going back now to that last piece, and I'll give it back to you. And that's, there is one other person at Costco I have to mention, and well, I guess I can mention his name, or I could give him a fake name. It is Patrico. It's Patrick. And when I walked into Costco, James wasn't actually in the produce department. Actually, I had my first social out at just a month after at Christmas, and I was a broken man sitting there, and I was quiet, and James is this tall, big-mouthed guy sitting across me just going on and laughing, and we're like, what kind of crack cocaine are you on today? And James sat there sipping on his little Kool-Aid or pop, never drank, and I thought, okay, if that crap's coming out of your mouth and you're not drinking, dude, I got to get to know you because you're wild. And I mean that in a good way, because you're authentic. James, you got this side of you. Well, you're just authentic and you're funny and humorous. And I think that's the side that you have to stop covering up, because it's really who you are. And joy is a way to change people's mental health, make them happier. So you have a gift there. But Patrick trained me to be a stalker. And Patrick didn't really open up to me about his own life. He was different. And that's okay, because the reason why I connected to James and have this kind of relationship, which will be for the rest of my life, is because, and this is the message to everybody, when when it's okay to say you're not okay and talk about your life, even if it's a struggle, you open up the door for other people to want to connect. Not everybody will, but people will develop trust, and they may want to be friends or part of you. So I'm not judging Patrick. He just trained me, but then he left. I went to get some other job in the warehouse, and I lost touch with him. And he came around once in a while, flying by on his forklift, almost killing me a couple times. And I'm going like, okay, thanks, Patrick. But when I started doing this rehearsal, I couldn't keep asking you to come. So I reached out to Patrick, and I liked Patrick because there was something about Patrick that I knew he had a story. Because he was telling me about his background coming from Sony. He was in sales, and somehow I found out he was a journalist and with the CBC. And I'm going like, wait a minute, you're at Costco and you've only been here a couple of years. What's your story? And everybody should know I'm a storyteller, but I get people's stories out of them on my radio show. If you listen to it, you'll hear some amazing interviews of people like James. And so I said, can you come over and sit in my room and watch me? So he went through that process. And the first time I did my talk for him, he told me after, he said, I just want to tell you, I connect deeply to this talk, and I almost got emotional and could cry about it. And he opened up and told me his story. And when he went into Costco, he was one of those people walking in like a zombie, like I was, coming from a part of his life where things had changed and it was very difficult. And when I told him in private that I felt shame, he looked at me and he understood. And so when you value people, when you treat people a certain way at work, don't treat them like judge them by the book on their cover, because people are golden underneath. But understand that every human being is a great person, and treat them like you would want to treat your own children or be treated. So as I got to know Patrick's story, and now he's gone, he's doing his teaching practicum, he works part-time, it costs a couple days. I appreciate him, and he'll tell it to somebody else who wants to hear it, but he has life experiences, seeing things in the world that were very difficult when he was a journalist. And so for that, his brain needed a rest as well. He needed to get stronger and develop his life. Well, what happened was I went out because we're supposed to do live presentations, and I said to people, I want to get in front of groups, and he lined up a talk for me. He was one of the first people to jump on it, which I appreciate, to go talk to his class at Douglas College. And so there I was standing in front of the class, and I said, Patrick, here's my cell phone. Can you video it? Because the way it works is you videotape it, then you send it to your coach. And by the way, I think I mentioned my coach won the #2 in the world speaking championship. So I was scared of her. And it's like I got it. The bar is really high. So I sent this video off, and she saw it, and she calls me back. She said, I saw your video. Well, we were on a Zoom video call because every week I would rehearse and then talk to my coach. And she goes, I liked everything you said. She said, your voice is perfect. You're up and down with your voice and your storytelling voice. And she said, but then when I saw you, I didn't like it. And she says, you got to stop doing that. And I'm all confused because I'm thinking like, what are you talking about? I'm just being the avatar you taught me to be. And she said, no, I asked you to be animated, Tom, which is what she taught me, to get your voice to go up and down in a range. But she said, I didn't want you to be who you're not. But she said that, but then I watched the beginning of your video and I saw a guy I'd never seen before. I said, what are you talking about? She said, did you see the first 4 minutes of that video? I said, yeah. I said, I got kind of angry at Patrick because I told Patrick to start recording when I started talking and doing my talk, but he actually turned my cell phone on too early and he recorded me just chatting with his students. And then it ran out at the end of tape, so we missed the last ending, and I was so pissed. And I sent it to my coach. I said, I'm really sorry, but I didn't blame Patrick. Patrick, you loser. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Patrick. And then I get this call, and then I call Patrick, and I saw him the next time I saw him sitting with me doing the rehearsal. I said, I owe you a lifetime of thanks, because I said, that little screw up actually showed the authentic, real Tom. And here's why that's so important, because when I was climbing my career and being successful in my career and got married and everything, had my daughter and stuff, that's who I was. But the crust that built up on me, the cement from all the tough stuff in life, all the negativity and challenges, it basically triggered me to go back to the meaning I had in my brain about who I was told I was, which is not very good, not talented. And so all throughout a good part of my life, I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. I wasn't the authentic Tom. I could still be a CEO, but if I was a CEO acting as my real self, I would be far more likable and successful. And that was a discovery later in my career, but that was a discovery through performing a TED Talk, which completely has changed my life. You don't need to be James, and people don't need to put on a face and put on an act. If you meet somebody like me, who, yes, I've got a big profile. We're doing a movie and stuff soon, which, I can tell you about too. But you don't need to be different, because I can see through that. I'd rather be around people who they are, even if you're flawed, than somebody who's putting on an act to be fake who they're not. But a lot of times when we do that, we're covering up our insecurity of what we fear because we were told we're no good. The truth is, you were born into the world with no neurons, with 2 million neurons in your brain that were empty, and they started being wired with thoughts and emotions. You're golden. You're beautiful. Every person on the planet is an amazing person. If you can just believe in yourself and not wait for somebody to pat you on the back, give you the raise at Costco, say you did a good job, but just wake up feeling, you know what, I love myself. I'm great. then the world will open up to you and mental health will fall away. You'll never feel anxious or depressed about it because you'll be thinking positive about yourself. And that, by the way, people like Mike Tyson, who's now struggling with his mental health, the reason why he's a train wreck is because he was mistreated as a kid. And now he can't, even after winning championships, he's struggling. He's in a state that's terrible. And story after story, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, you look at personalities who have come out. The Rock struggled with depression, almost committed suicide, and on and on and on. And I've had people through me talking about my story, start opening up and revealing to me their story about how they almost didn't want to make it through life. And by the way, when I'm saying that, I'm talking about CEOs, vice presidents, people who run companies, telling me in private that they planned how to take their life, or they screwed it up, or they live in anxiety and depression and they don't know where to turn. This is why it's so important, James, for me, wherever I go after Costco, I won't be there forever. I can't be. It's not part of this stage of my life. But I will never forget you and some of the people. And I'll be fair, some of the people don't talk to me there. They're just wonderful people, but they're independent. And I love all those people. It doesn't matter. But why I connected to you is because of that single thread of opening up and talking about our stories. So I encourage everybody to open up and talk about your struggles. And by the way, even at work, and if you have a manager who tells you tough, it's just your job, you know what? Go above them and tell somebody, because you have a harassment policy and you have others who are there to protect your mental health, not to destroy you as a human being. And if I run a company and people work for me, that's the way I run my company. And I've met a lot of great leaders and supervisors and managers at Costco who understand that. But we know that when we experience things in our lives, you go and you find a home and a place where you want to work, where you feel happy and you can be who you are.
Well, thank you, Tom, for that. And there's so many things that I want to talk about that you mentioned that got me. Okay. There's so many things that you just said that I really want to elaborate on, and that we share, especially our passion about opening up with people. That is something that became so important to me in working with people. So, Tom, we're running low on time here a little bit, but I want to finish with some really cool things that you're actually taking part in pretty soon. I believe that you have a movie that is in the works right now.
Yeah, and you're going to star in it. Well, my book was the power of networking. So everybody, even where you work at Costco, get to know people and don't judge people, because it's who they know and what's underneath them. Make it a point of finding out about people, who they are. And I've done that all my life. I wrote a book, and yes, even though you may not write a book, and I had to find a way to do it, I never done it. I was standing in my own way, but I met some people who in the U.S. read my book, and one person who read it gave it to a film company, and they loved it. So yes, we just launched the project. We're creating a major motion picture. They made me a producer in it because I want to control the movie. I don't want it made because it's going to be about me, my life, business. It will have part of the story of Costco in it. We're actually going to audition. The film director's won awards and has just released a new film that's been nominated for best film, best trailer, and the People's Choice for best actress. So this is the type of tribe I'm hanging with. They're in the U.S. We're going to probably shoot on both sides of the border. I mean, I've never done this kind of work, but now I'm a producer. And why I'm talking about is the film will be an epic film about my story and the messages I carry that we're going to have out there, and as wide as we can. And I even have a Grammy Award-winning Canadian who's going to write the original score for it. And I met him through a nutritional product company. So go figure. And his name's Steph Kars. He's going to probably look at the screenplay when it's ready and write the score. We'll find a performer to do it. Stuff like that, which is really kind of just blowing my mind, because I still pinch myself like, is this really happening? What the film is going to be is, I envision, by the way, and I've surprised you a little bit on this, but the people who have influenced my story. So there definitely be a piece of Costco in there. I'm not saying it'll be filmed at this Costco. And they will audition and hire actors. So somebody will play me, my wife. My father's a big part of that, even though he died, because he shaped my life and business as well. And so, James, I've got somebody in mind that is an actor that I met at TEDx. He's tall, he's good looking, he's like you, and I'm not saying that everybody for James' ego. He doesn't see himself that way, but he has presence. So there's a guy who is actually on stage performing as an entertainer, and he travels. He's an actor. He's got this boyish look. He's tall, and his brother does the videography for the event. And he came up to me after, said, "I hear you're doing a movie," and so I haven't told you yet, but we're gonna basically create a scene in there where I come into Costco and I meet this person who starts mentoring me, James. And I'm hoping that this person will play it. You'll be involved to know about that if you're comfortable. But there'll be a lot of Costco in that movie that will actually be the part of my life that just shifted my whole life and thinking. And it may just end up part of the movie ending on the Bell Performing Arts Center backstage for TEDx with the crowd cheering and me being transformed, walking out with a completely different story. And the last part I want to say about that is even through this whole journey, I found Jesus Christ, my faith, which I gave up on. But when you have nothing in your life and you're looking for help to just take away the worry, sometimes you just turn to your faith. And then I started watching a religious show in the morning just so I could keep my brain from worrying about stuff. I couldn't figure out my life anymore, and I just said, Christ, Jesus, just take it and figure it out. If you want me to go to Costco, I'll go there. When it's time to go, take me. And it's opened doors and things have happened that are just blowing my mind, but I don't worry about working life out anymore. I just make it happen. So there's going to be a thread of faith in my movie as well. So there's going to be multiple themes in the movie about mental health, about physical health, about career health, about faith. And the narrative is going to rock. I mean, the beginning of the movie, we've already filmed and figured it out. It's going to be one of those movies that's going to be seen to be epic, where we want to just put people's hearts in their mouth. We're in what's called pre-production, so we're in the writing the screenplay soon. So they asked me to put together the narrative, so I put a binder of material together over the last 6 months, which was hard to do with my brain the way it was working. Now we're having calls, and we'll have the screenplay, and then they will then send it out to basically across Hollywood and the acting community. And we're going after anybody. I mean, there's a fellow named Dev Patel who's a star that's come up through the South Asian community that's made movies like Slumdog Millionaire. And I said to my director, I said, I don't want to hold back. He may think this is a bunch of crap, but we're going to send it to everybody. So we want to find the right people to portray the story. And I'm looking to do a major premiere of it in Canada, probably in 2021. Anybody who I connect to and wants to be friends with Costco, I'll invite people to it. You'll be there for sure. And then from there, I don't know where it goes. I've been asked to go to New York in October to speak at the Make a Difference conference on mental health. I'm talking to them tomorrow. My whole thing is I just want to use my story because it's really what keeps me alive and moving forward. Without it, James, I don't have a purpose. What happened to me, if I just focus on that, I can't find my way. And so here's my message to anybody who's feeling hopeless about their life. Find that needle in the haystack. Turn it into a purpose that you can do to go beyond yourself and your job and help the world. It takes away everything, and it gives you a reason. And they say that, I'll leave you with this, that a study was done with 90-year-olds, and they asked them, this is a Canadian study, what are the 3 biggest regrets you have? And the answers were, the top 3 were, didn't do enough reflection, didn't take enough risk, and didn't leave a big enough legacy. And so you look at all the people in the world who have done something, and even if you're at Costco working in that great warehouse, go find a passion, do something, go into schools and talk to children, go draw and go do something to help the world, go volunteer to build a house or go across the world to, dig wells, whatever it is. That's when you're in service to others, you can't feel any pain. And it gives yourself a reason, because once Costco is gone, if you define your life and happiness on your family or Costco, your spouse, as God teaches me, all of those foundations crumble. And so, in Christ, that's your strength. But do something to help the world. And when you do that in service to others, gratitude, and this is what I'll leave you with, James, all the things you've done for me through this whole journey, I hadn't had to pay you for your time. James has always said, yeah, if you need me, I'll be there. And we didn't talk about this at Costco, because that's not nobody's business. But James, you've been there for this walk through the journey, and I've seen you grow. You started your podcast. I know we've inspired each other in different ways. And you haven't seen James yet, guys. He's at Costco and he's growing, and I think he's one of the best leaders there because of how he treats people. But you haven't seen the doors open yet in your life. And it's not about me. Tony Robbins says, I'm not your guru. I'm not your guru, dude. everything's in you and the greatness comes out of you. And even a while ago, you wouldn't come on my podcast because you were anxious about it, and we did it, and you were brilliant. And I said, listen to that guy. And by the way, we're releasing it next week, everybody, so you want to hear it. It's an amazing story of courage. And, well, you said, I can't interview people on my show. And here we are for almost just over an hour and 50 minutes. And you're freaking interviewing me, and you're doing an amazing job. So, dig deep inside, everybody, all you Costcoites and whoever is out there listening to this. Even if you have mental health challenges, the greatness is within you. What you believe you are is what you can do. And there's no limit to what you can do. You have everything in you to accomplish. And people says to me, 10 years ago, you were sitting in a chair as a business person. If they were to say to me that at this point in my life, not far from that, I would have my own business, a radio show, a best-selling book. I did a TV show as well. I went to Hollywood. Now we're making a movie out of the book. And they're now wanting to hear my story through TEDx around different parts of the world because people think it's interesting. I never would have believed it. And the only difference is back then I was listening to the reptilian brain, which had thoughts from the past. When I killed that, slayed little Tommy had to die before, the quiet warrior, the real me came to life. And all of you need to sometimes let that little voice in you die before you can find the true you and live the life you were supposed to.
Well, thank you, Tom. That was amazing. Before we wrap up, I just want to honor you with your story, and thank you so much for coming on and telling us all that and being vulnerable. I really appreciate that. So one last thing, can you just plug where people can find you? Your Twitter, your Facebook, your radio show? Just go for it.
Sure. And when we're done here, because we're going to have to clean up all the balls of beer that we just drank, and no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so it's all on my website, KRE-AT.ca, and it's with a K, KRE-AT, a play on words.ca. It's a people development company that I built 10 years ago after, being a paid executive. On there is a media page with everything that's going on. There's a book page there. You can find my book. You can get it online at any bookstore or offline, your favorite store. If you do get it, I'll sign it for you, and I want you to know that all the royalties I make from that I give to charity, particularly homelessness, mental health, and addiction. And then if you go to TEDx BearCreekPark or TEDxBCP.ca and leave your email, and come on, guys, you're going to say, I don't want to leave my email because people are going to bug you. Well, step out of your comfort zone. You can unsubscribe anytime you want. Geez, how are you going to open up and learn what's going on in the world? All right, I'm off my soapbox. Go there, leave your email, and they'll give you the updates when my TEDx video's out. And every year, TEDx BearCreekPark will be here. If you want to have an experience that's going to change you, go to one. You'll hear things that'll make you think different. Other than that, you can reach out personally and just connect to me. And hey, if you need a watermelon or some potatoes, come to Costco, Port Coquitlam, and I'll be there. I'm the guy with the black running cap and the beard, trying to help people. So there you go.
Great, Tom. We need to do this again. And we're looking forward to part 2 of this podcast. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Japes.
Take care.